The event, Will Pulliam and Zach Allen.
Strong players.
In Modern Seat, we have a 4-color Urza mirror match. Expected a mirror match. Didn't expect it with those decks. And then Rakdos Reanimator, the choice of Will Pulliam.
They're both very smart players.
So Esper Hero against Bant Scapeshift. Esper Hero, a bit of a mid-range deck. Mid-range deck that can flex into control. Now, oftentimes those decks will struggle against something like Scapeshift.
Right, it's a little bit harder to interact with the land-based strategies like this. And the way that the Esper Hero decks try to interact is just kind of reducing the resources that both players have before having some card advantage engine, Hero of Precinct 1, a Planeswalker, and so on, to build back up.
On Corey's side, we see a turn 2 Arboreal Grazer, ramping him up to a 3rd land.
And Soorani having this turn 2 Hero of Precinct 1 is so strong here.
Right. Both of Kaya shoots down the blocker and he swings in. Well, I think, to your point, if the game goes long enough, Corey will be at an advantage, but this hero actually allows Shaheen to play an aggressive strategy.
Right, this is the spot where Soorani's able to kind of try and disrupt what Baumeister's doing and just apply some pressure, disrupt a thing, hit you for some damage, disrupt a thing, hit you for some damage. It's similar to the Delver or Death Shadow strategies we see in the Eternal formats.
But despite the pressure, Corey is still firing on all cylinders here. Turn 3 was a copy of Circuitous Route to get him up to 6 lands.
Well, next turn is the first turn that Field of the Dead is going to start creating bodies.
Second hero from Brian.
Those are also going to create some bodies.
Yeah. And we see... Ooh, okay, our sweeper here from Corey. Going to be Time Wipe.
And a Memorial to Genius hiding out down there is actually a very good land for Baumeister in this particular matchup because it is just one piece of cardboard that can turn into multiple pieces of cardboard.
And no follow-up for Soorani. Had just the 2 heroes. And now sits back. No counter magic in the main for Soorani either.
This is the spot where Soorani was kind of priced into just jamming that hero because he knew that next turn could be the Scapeshift turn and he needed to apply pressure. Otherwise, he's just not going to be able to win the game if it goes long, like we were talking about before.
Now, with these land-based strategies, there is a fail rate. You see Corey... Elvish Rejuvenators into a Hallowed Fountain. I was looking for a Scapeshift to follow up there, but he did not have it. He makes Field of Ruin instead.
Right, but, you know, it's not exactly like he's falling behind here by any stretch. This Teferi is a very powerful card, but it's not the kind of thing that's going to be able to profitably interact with what Baumeister's doing. Soorani needs to find some sort of pressure here.
Growth Spiral to start from Baumeister. Trying into a lot of lands in his hand here. None of them, though, are Field of the Dead.
Looks like he's thinking about if he even wants to put anything into play, because he might just want to save his land drops for when he has a copy of Field of the Dead.
That was my thought here. And it looks like he chooses not to put a land into play off Growth Spiral. He will draw 2 off the Memorial.
May have cashed in a few too many luck points on that Time Wipe earlier. Really just looking for copies of Field of the Dead at this point.
Blossoming Sands gains him a life. Attacks Teferi down to 4. The Oath triggers. Soorani back to work. Without the Field of Dead or Scapeshift, I don't think Corey will be able to answer this Teferi.
No, he really needs to try and find something here to just get anything on the battlefield.
Yeah. Main deck answers for Shaheen. If a Scapeshift or a zombie army shows up, he has 2 main deck Deputy of Detention.
It looks like he has 2 copies of Dovin's Veto hiding out in his list as well. He may be trying to represent those.
Okay, so...
Uh-oh.
And Giant Hydroid Gracis for Corey.
Splash.
Yeah, that is an 8-8 who will draw 4. Yeah, you're right. So I was speaking a little early when I said he had no counter magic. He does have 2 counter spells in the main.
Please make your way to table 349.
8-8 Gracis. Teferi back down to 4.
Always hard whenever seeing a Planeswalker get attacked now after all the arena play to not hear the little voices. Attack Teferi. Teferi says, do you want me to phase you out of time? You know, something like that. Ooh.
Thought erasure from Shaheen, and it looks like Corey has drawn a couple of good ones off that
like
Gracis.
My game-winning bomb, the other game-winning bomb, the 3rd game-winning bomb, the 4th game-winning bomb, or a couple things that just draw cards. Ball's in your court.
I like this play from Shaheen because there's 2 copies of Scape Shift.
Look at that card hiding out in Soorani's hand.
And here's how he's setting it up. Right, with 2 copies of Scape Shift, he can't take them both. So 1 Scape Shift and 2 Scape Shifts doesn't make much of a difference. So he leaves them both. And you pointed out the Deputy of Detention in Shaheen's hand. That'll answer 1 round of zombies. But it actually looks like he's going to take care of the Krasis. Now that's a bit of a surprise to me.
So the thing that I'm surprised about here is that he decided to mill this copy of Tyrant Scorn, because that card's actually incredible in this matchup with specifically Deputy of Detention, where you can just return your own Deputy to your hand and give you more virtual copies of that effect. And it's one of the more important effects in the matchup itself. But if he has other copies of Deputy of Detention, Tyrant Scorn, and things to that effect, and he's just looking for ways to close the game, it would make sense that he would do that.
I think you're right, because you can put the Deputy back in your hand.
Right.
And the Krasis is a 0/0.
Right. The things that it's exiling are not cards that Soorani is that worried about returning to the battlefield. You know, zombie tokens, which don't actually come back in 0/0 Hydroid Krasis, for example.
Corey going to tap 7 mana. So it's 3 floating and cast Scape Shift. With a card like Scape Shift, you actually have to float your mana before casting it. Because when you cast it, your opponent says, okay, then it's already resolving. And it looks like he's just sacrificing 7 lands.
It's 2 green, 1 blue in the pool.
So
he's sacrificing the 7 in order to leave up this Field of Ruin so he can make zombies at instant speed. He wants to be able to get 4 Field of the Dead to get those triggers.
Right.
And make
3
sure
lands with different names, and that's exactly enough to make zombies.
Exactly. Ooh, and getting a copy of Evolving Wilds here is another way that Baumeister is going to be able to keep getting zombies with flash, so to speak.
Field of the Dead. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands with different names, put a 2/2 zombie into play.
You know what's better than 1 zombie or 2 or, heck, 27 zombies? 28 zombies.
He's falling just. He's getting about 30 to 50 zombies here. Falling short though.
They're wild zombies.
Right.
We just see Deputy of Detention trying to play in Soorani's yard.
Gotta make his land drop for the turn, then we'll get up there.
That is a 2 and then an 8 to make 28.
That is definitely the easiest way to represent 28 zombies.
I mean, it's that or get 5 dice or something, and I imagine neither player thinks they're long for this world either way.
Right, either the game ends or they die.
Now it's 282. Or 262.
262? Maybe it's 8 of them with 2/1/1 counters on each of them. That's not true. Another Scape Shift in hand. Now, I don't believe his deck actually...
Ripped another copy of Hydroid Krasis.
Yeah. Ooh. I like that. It's a good hand for Corey.
not easy to grind through. This is a lot of the quote-unquote problem with the Esper Hero decks right now, as they kind of struggle against just a bunch of Hydroid Crisis.
Yeah, Thought Erasure. What would you like to take here? Probably one of the Hydroid Crises.
You can just roll a die, pick which one. They're all pretty bad for you.
One more Deputy is in Shaheen's hand.
Believe he left the Surveil on top.
Okay. If it's on top, Corey, that might entice Corey to use this Field of Ruin.
Ooh, Bolus's Citadel. That's a big one.
All right. So Deputy Retention exiles all of the zombies. Land and a pass, and yeah, Corey actually just going to Growth Spiral. Leaves the Field of Ruin as is. Puts an island into play. Gets 4 zombies.
This is leaving that Field of Ruin in play to try and leave a lethal number of zombies kind of
Right.
in the tank.
Interested to see how many more lands are in Corey's deck. He sacrificed 7.
So he has 3, 6, 9, 11 on the battlefield, minus the 7 in his graveyard that he sacrificed. So that's a total of 18 lands. I believe these decks traditionally play 27 of them, and the deck list here makes it a little bit difficult to parse the exact quantity of lands in his deck.
Yeah, 27 or 28 is the number. I suppose, unlike what you see out of Valakut Scapeshift decks in Modern, this deck does not typically have to worry about running out of lands. You can Scapeshift.
I believe there are
A
30
bunch.
lands in Baumeister's deck.
Oh, wow. Okay, so just half lands. Here's a large Hydroid Crisis for Corey.
Leaving up a copy of Evolving Wilds, trying to keep, again, those flash zombies at the ready.
4 more cards for Baumeister. Another land means 4 more zombies. Here's some untapped ones. And he will pass. Evolving Wild's not guaranteed here to find a land. Corey has gone through a lot of his deck, only plays 4 basics, or make that 5 basics. Bolus's Citadel from Brian. Needs to find a way to rebuy one of these Deputy of Detention. There's only real ways to sweep the zombie tokens.
Right. And there's a point where he's at a high enough life total, he may be incentivized to wait to pull the trigger on that.
So you're looking at Tyrant Scorn and Teferi Time Raveler?
Right. Those are the big 2 things that are going to let you do that. Oh, interesting play there. So Soorani could have rolled up Teferi to draw this Teferi off the top, but with such a high life total, Soorani chose to instead cast the Teferi off the top of his library just to add some loyalty to that one.
Goes down to 24. I think you're right. He's not going to take lethal this turn. All right, looks like Corey would untap with 12 zombies, with Shaheen having 2 blockers.
Well, he also has this Hydroid Crisis, though.
Okay, so you're right with the Crisis.
Yeah, if Soorani doesn't have a removal spell, I believe
think
this is lethal. Maybe he was just banking on Baumeister not having another land to get with Evolving Wilds.
Yeah, Evolving Wilds does find a forest, so it's 12 zombies and the Crisis. Right, 8 in the air means
Also-
that 8 on the ground is lethal.
Right. Could bank on the Hydroid Crisis going after Teferi instead.
That's a hard one to bank on here. Things look good for Corey. Maybe just send them all upstairs. And here's the attack.
If the Rejuvenator's getting in, I imagine we're seeing some upstairs
Yeah.
action.
And we are. So Corey Baumeister takes the first game. Scapeshift does fire off, and the army of zombies is too much for Shaheen. It's a 1-0 win.
That was an incredibly convincing game on the Bandscape Shift side of things.
Yeah, and on Shaheen's side, he had most of the tools he wanted. Right? He had a turn 2 hero. He had a turn 3 hero. He had both main deck copies of Deputy of Detention. This is running, I think, above
This is the
average
formula,
for the matchup.
yeah. Double Thought Erasure, double Deputy, couple Teferis, got to have two of his more important card in the matchup and those heroes to be able to apply pressure, and it still just wasn't good enough, even with Baumeister skipping 2 or 3 turns to not really do very much.
Yeah, it really speaks to the difficulty of the matchup. Sheen's going to have to look for ways to improve. Now, all of our games in sideboarding right now, the updates, Braun-Duin takes Game 1 in Modern, and it is Will Pulliam with Rakdos Reanimator taking Game 1 over on the Legacy table.
Okay. This special podcast guest keeping the dream alive.
Yeah, looks like they carrying weight so far.
Yeah, it's a good thing they picked up this relatively unknown individual.
So sideboards for Shaheen. He had most of his tools that game, can we mention, but it was not enough. Can he add more? Do any of these things help?
So a lot of the things that he's going to be looking to do here are shave on some of his spot removal because that's just not very powerful in the matchup, and bring in things like Golden Demise, Kaya's Wrath, etc. to be able to check the zombie tokens themselves, and then things like Duress, which are going to be good at just whittling down resources. These circuitous routes, which even if it feels silly to just get 2 lands, that 1 piece of cardboard making 2 pieces of cardboard ends up being so relevant for a resource-heavy deck like Bant Scapeshift. So anything Soorani can do to reduce the quantity of resources that Baumeister has is going to be a win for Soorani.
So you caught some of the recent spoilers. We're in spoiler season right now for Commander 2019. It's the next set coming out here. You can pre-order that from Star City Games, and it will be shipping the end of next week, Friday, August 23rd. But right now, it's available for order at go.starcitygames.com/C19.
I am so excited for some of these previews. Big fan of Zedru, the goat lady, donating things, and there are some cards that just donate automatically for upside, and that is right up my alley. Very excited about that. I've already pre-ordered some cards myself.
I always like the concept of Zedru decks because you're giving other people your junk, basically.
Oh yeah,
here's this terrible card I'm playing. Why don't you have it?
I'm never the type to play anything that's just has a horrendous drawback. I'm always the type to play something like Quarantine Field, where I exile 2 or 3 permanents and then just give away this Oblivion Ring effect and go, you know what? I insist you have this Torpor Orb or this useless permanent.
So you're not giving them Bronze Bombshells or things like that?
No, Bronze Bombshell, they kind of just go, all right, yeah, I mean, I take 7, I guess. I'll go to 33.
Yeah, that's nice.
Okay. Or like even Illusions of Grandeur, it's just, all right, yeah, I fetched a couple times, so I guess I'll go to 17 after taking 20.
You give them Lord of the Pit. No, you can't play that. That's a black card.
And the other problem with a lot of them is something like Steel Golem or Grid Monitor, where you can't cast creature spells. If they kill your Zedru in response, you lose your way to donate it. Or Aggressive Mining, where you can't play lands. They just kill your commander, and all of a sudden you can't play lands to pay the commander tax.
Yeah, well, that's, it was an aggressive play.
But, donating something like Winter Orb or Standstill, that's my speed. Standstill in particular is just a special really kind of like, all right, everybody, what do y'all say we play a long game of cards? Like, a long game of cards. Like,
let's just not play cards.
Like, let's draw cards one at a time and put lands on the battlefield forever.
I like the global enchantments. You can give them trolley things like, was it Land Equilibrium?
Is that card legal?
I think you can play it in Commander.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the white card out of Mirage that's like there can only be 5 lands in play.
Okay, yeah, that one's not fun.
Yeah, that one's not legal, for sure.
Limited resources?
Yeah, limited resources is banned.
Land Equilibrium is everybody has to have the same number of lands. If you try to play more lands than the person with the least lands, then you have to sacrifice one.
I don't like that, 'cause I want my deck to win with Elixir of Immortality.
Well, yeah, so you get 2 lands in play and a Land Equilibrium, then you just, maybe you can Zuran Orb away all your other lands, and you just, every time your deck gets low, you just shuffle the Elixir back in. It's nice. Really fun gameplay. You gain 5 life every so often.
Look, I just want to cast the same Flusterstorm enough times to remind my opponent of what's up.
Both players on 7 here for the second game. Things evening up on the legacy table as well. Pete Ingram takes the sideboard game. And we'll see Thought Erasure. See Veil of Summer out of the sideboard for Corey Baumeister.
Veil of Summer is so strong.
And we see Agent of Treachery from Corey as
a
well.
nice
That's out of the
grindy card.
sideboard, yeah.
Stealing a Planeswalker, very strong. And even if you kill the Agent of Treachery, that Planeswalker has been stolen.
Corey just keeping a 2-land hand here. Wonder if we're going to see him go for something like Elvish Rejuvenator.
Yeah, the big thing here is you may even see him go for something like Growth Spiral. If Mana Denial is kind of the plan here, just taking away things that cycle could be so strong.
Looking at Shaheen's hand, he has a Teferi Time Raveler in hand. He has a Dovin's Veto in hand. Because of the veto, he's thinking that he might have to take Corey's Teferi.
Yeah, is Shaheen missing a white source?
Certainly doesn't have one on the battlefield. Don't know other ones in his hand.
Yeah.
Takes the Teferi.
A lot of the question in this is how long you think the game is going to go and what
Right.
you think the game is going to end up looking like. All right, left the card on top. Probably a white source coming.
Corey leaves up that Growth Spiral, and there is Isolated Chapel, so it's the white source you were talking about. 2 mana, it'll be Hero of Precinct 1.
Big fan of developing the hero before playing any of the other cards because when you don't think you're going to win the incredibly long games, you need to prioritize developing a threat over your card that's just going to kind of maybe knock Corey a little bit further behind.
Rejuvenator was the play in hand, but it looks like Corey has drawn Circuitous Route, so he's going to shock for that and get it into play before Shaheen has that Dovin's Veto up. That's a pretty big turn of events here.
Yeah, that's a big couple of cards drawn on Baumeister's side between the untapped land as well as the route.
And I was saying, it almost feels like Shaheen has to leave up Dovin's Veto. He's going to, because he knows there's a Scape Shift in Corey's hand, he's going to take down Counter Magic for one more turn here to make Teferi.
You've got to attack. You need to apply pressure. The nice thing about this Teferi is it also gives you a way to cast your sweepers at instant speed.
-1, draws a card, no targets there, but does find a land. And he'll attack in for 2. But shields are down. We'll see what Corey does with this turn.
You also have to develop this Teferi before you try to go for Dovin's Veto, just because there's that Veil of Summer hiding out in Baumeister's hand.
Right, it's still there.
You need to be able to put Corey in a position where he either gets no value out of this Veil of Summer by having to preempt it and just turning it into a sort of silence, or make it to where he can't respond with the card.
I also like that on Shaheen's board there's no great target for this Agent of Treachery. Like, yes, Corey can take the Teferi. Shaheen will attack it down. And he'll get to keep playing.
There may be a point where he prioritized playing this Teferi to try and find another white source, because it would be pretty brutal if Corey just played Agent of Treachery and took the Isolated Chapel before this Godless Shrine was there.
Circuitous Route for Corey.
And the idea here is Corey knows that the top of his library is just so much stronger than Shaheen's.
He gets 2 more lands. Now, Veil of Summer. Spells you cannot control can't be countered this turn. What Corey is setting up for, I believe here, is just next turn, main phase Veil of Summer, then cast Scape Shift.
Correct. He just wants to try and create a situation where he can force this spell through whatever it is Shaheen has and hope that he doesn't have an answer as well as everything else that he has going on.
I believe right now Shaheen has Dovin's Veto and Deputy of Detention. See what Corey wants to do. It's 4 mana, 5, 6, 7. Could be a shift, could be an agent. Looks like it will be Agent of Treachery. 2/3. Steals a permanent when it enters the battlefield.
This is actually kind of nice because it can kind of flip the script a little bit and make it to where Soorani can't actually answer it. Because if it takes this Teferi, then Soorani can't cast his counter spells.
You're right. Soorani's only counterspell here is Dovin's Veto, so it actually doesn't play against this. The Teferi is Corey's, and Agent is not, even if the Agent leaves, the Teferi is still Corey's.
Exactly.
This is his now.
And the best way that Soorani has to answer that Agent is something to the effect of Deputy of Detention. And let me tell you what you do not want to put under a Deputy of Detention.
Oh, no. Yeah, a 7-drop with a nice enters the battlefield ability.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a bit rough.
In Corey's seat, if your opponent targets your Agent of Treachery with a Deputy of Detention, you lean forward, say no takebacks, and throw your Agent under the Deputy of Detention. On the other hand, Deputy of Detention on Teferi, if you then have a way to, say, return your own Deputy of Detention or kill it, that's a way to steal your own Teferi back.
We'll see what he picks. It is a Deputy of Detention, and he's going to go for the Teferi. And Veil of Summer from Corey. Corey still draws the card.
Oh, that's such a blowout.
Oh, he Veil of Summer the triggered ability, right.
And Soorani couldn't Dovin's Veto back because of Teferi.
And that, because Shaheen knew about the Veil.
Right. Oh, that's so brutal.
Yeah. So Shaheen losing the Deputy of Detention. A pivotal card here.
Well, there is a Deputy on the battlefield.
Yeah. Elvish Rejuvenator finds a land. Corey will have Scapeshift mana up. He can end step the Scapeshift if he wants, thanks to Teferi.
Oh, gross.
Yeah, he'll just pass.
And this is part of why Teferi is so good in this Scapeshift deck, is you just get a shot to make almost 40 zombies on the end step. I guess it's... Oh, well, no, because only 3 of them could be Field of the Dead, so...
Only,
I guess Corey would have to settle for a mere 27 zombies.
Teferi, Hero of Dominaria from Shaheen. Draws a card, but he can't use the mana on Corey's turn. So Teferi will -3 instead of drawing a card. It will tuck away the Teferi. We'll put it back into Shaheen's deck. And Corey's in the Scapeshift here. Sacrificing all 9 lands.
All right.
3 fields, 6 other lands would be 27 zombies. Feels like Shaheen, let's see, 27 zombies. Shaheen has 5 blockers. That's lethal.
Cool 45 damage coming across the creatures that Corey already has on the battlefield.
Feels like this should be lethal.
That's a good feeling.
I think there are enough zombies.
Corey just kind of checking his bases here, going, well, I think I've won, but there's no reason to give up any percentage points if I don't have to. Doesn't want to get basics, wants to get Field of Ruin, Evolving Wilds to make sure he can get instant speed zombies if necessary. Bunch of duels to not get the basics, so Evolving Wilds and Field of Ruin still have things to get in the deck. He only has 3 basics left.
261 zombies. And that's the handshake from Shaheen. Whether it's 27 or 200, it is too many. Corey, the 2-0 winner here.
Yeah, and that was a fairly dominating performance that kind of shows why we aren't seeing as many Esper Hero decks in the format right now. Is even if the deck tends to line up well against what other people are doing, it can just struggle so hard against these land-based strategies.
So Corey, still undefeated in team tournaments here, has never played a team tournament on the tour that he has not won. Picks up a win there. And you see him moving over to Will Pulliam. That's the match where if Will can get the Game 3 win, that will be the round.
Do you think that maybe, instead of thinking that Shaheen and Pete decided to team with someone else, do you think Corey decided maybe he wanted better teammates even though they won the last tournament? He's unstoppable.
Here's the thought. Last time they won the team up, so Shaheen has to... Here's what happened. Shaheen has to play Esper. And so when they won last time, Shaheen played a Colonnade deck in Modern.
Right.
And so they pitched the team, and she said, hey, guys, I'm playing Esper. And Corey wanted to play Standard because he plays Standard. He said, look, man, you can't play Esper in Modern right now. There's this Hogak thing going on. Shaheen said, well, I'm playing Standard then. And that's when the deal breaker happened.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I feel like we're just narrating an episode of MTV's Behind the Music.
Well, in the Rakdos Reanimator versus 4-color Delver match here, we've reached turn 3, which is usually good for the Delver deck.
Yeah, generally speaking, Rakdos Reanimator wants to win earlier than this. Even if it doesn't literally put the opponent at 0 life on the first or second turn, that's generally the sweet spot for when that deck wants to kind of do its thing, so to speak.
Yeah, this is not a brainstorm deck. This is a deck that looks at its opening 7 and tries to kill you with it.
Right, this is a deck that benefited a great deal from the London Mulligan. This is something where its opening 7s can just be so strong with something like Chancellor of the Annex, Entomb, Reanimate, Dark Ritual. It's sacrifice and card advantage for raw power.
All right, now we do get to have some play going on here. So on the end step, Will is loading up for a combo. It's a copy of Entomb. He has looks like a 6 or 7 card hand, even with this on the stack.
And we see a big pile of dazes in Ingram's hand from the looks of things.
Right, then he'll have to decide what it is he wants to daze.
And there's even a trick he could set up here if he only has the one where he can Wasteland Polluted Delta. And then, assuming Pulliam goes to fetch in response, then Ingram gets the chance to respond to that fetch and daze the Entomb. And the reason that Ingram thought so hard about this, so we see in the graveyard that Ingram doesn't actually have anything that gives him full information of Pulliam's hand. Generally, when you're playing against a Reanimator strategy, you get to fight against one of two things. You get to either fight against the enablers, these are your Entombs, Faithless Lootings, etc., or you get to fight against the payoff cards. These are your actual Reanimate spells, you know, the Namesake Reanimate, Exhume, Animate Dead, and so on. And you don't really want to try to spend too many resources fighting both because you get a sort of virtual card advantage by just fighting over the Reanimate spells. Because if you let this Entomb resolve, then future Entombs from Pulliam don't really matter because there's already a card in the graveyard he wants to reanimate. So instead, we see Ingram kind of picking the fight of, I'll actually just try to beat up on Reanimate, Animate Dead, etc.
Yeah. Target was selected from Will. He decides to go for Elish Norn. Now we see his hand Exhume, Unmask.
And I actually like this line from Ingram. The big reason is when you have something like a Tarmogoyf out, you can shrink the number of outs that Pulliam has by just attacking, because eventually Reanimate's not an out if you don't have enough life to pay for it.
It is Unmask, exiling the second Exhume from Will's hand. Pete again having to decide whether this is something he wants to daze or whether he wants to give Will a look at the hand.
Yeah, and this is always tough because if you use a counter spell on this Unmask, then that's pretty close to what Unmask would have done anyway. It's just whether or not you want to try to fight over this information that you're going to be giving away by just putting your hand on the table.
Yeah, this early on the combo turn, it is scary to give Rakdos full information of your hand. Then Will can kind of puzzle out whether or not he can go for the combo or not.
Exactly. When these 4-color Delver decks, there's not 1 mana counter spell, right? It's actually things like Flusterstorm, Spell Pierce, etc.
Right.
These are what we refer to as soft permission spells because they're conditional. If your opponent has 3 mana and is casting a 1 mana spell, your Spell Pierce doesn't actually do anything. So Pulliam being able to suss out what hoops he needs to jump through to turn off these counter spells is actually incredibly valuable.
It's like 3 dazes in the hand for Ingram. Does he want to reveal that? He's going to float some mana. Cast Brainstorm. Thoughtseize, Delver, and Surgical Extraction.
Surgical Extraction is what we call a hit.
Yeah, that was the big one. The other two are ones he can put back. I agree. But you have to fire it off now then, right?
Unless you want to fight over this unmask, because what the surgical is going to do is kind of give you a 0-mana hard counter. As long as there's only one creature in the graveyard, then something like Exhume isn't going to be good enough, and anything that targets is very easy for you to counter.
That's it. Surgical Extraction the play. It hits Elesh Norn. Yeah, Will not playing a blue deck, so that just happens. Gets to look at the hand. It has 2 more Exhumes. Faithless Looting, Gristlebrand, and Chancellor of the Annex.
So heads up play from Will where he didn't put a Gristlebrand or a Chancellor in the graveyard in order to play around Surgical Extraction. Because he knew he would kind of be forcing Ingram's hand with a card like Unmask the following turn. And Elesh Norn is probably a good enough card to beat Tarmogoyf, but it's not such a good card that it's going to give Ingram the opportunity to take cards out of your hand.
3 Dazes and a Thoughtseize is what Will sees. This feels really hard to beat because the line I was looking at was fetch for a red source, Faithless Looting, and if you draw the land, land Exhume. But there's just no way that's beating this stack of Dazes.
Right, and fetching up something like Badlands is pretty rough against this Wasteland. You may end up feeling priced into that type of play if you think that if you want to hit a land anyway, then that's going to be good enough for these Exhumes. But this row of Dazes in conjunction with the Wasteland is so powerful. That's what these Delver decks bank on.
Right, so Unmask can take the first Daze. You can run an Exhume into the second Daze. But then your second Exhume is either going to get hit by the third Daze or by the Thoughtseize. This is just a rough look for Will.
Right, and he only has so much time. So normally you could say take Thoughtseize because that's Ingram's proactive interaction. That's to say that Ingram is the one with agency over when you get to use that. The Dazes are things that Pulliam has to sort of choose to play into. This means that he can try to bob and weave around them given the opportunity. But the way that things are playing out and set up, Pulliam doesn't have time to just jam a spell into a Daze, jam a spell into a Daze, jam a spell into a Daze. Because this Tarmogoyf is applying pressure. Though it is not a very big Tarmogoyf, it is only a 3/4 at the moment.
So he takes one of the Dazes, or no, goes for the Thoughtseize, changes his mind. But how do you beat 3 Dazes on Will's side?
Cabal Therapy is the card that he is drawing to here.
Okay, that would work. I would name Daze.
You know what?
Yeah.
We don't want to say it too loud and give him any tips, but I agree with you.
And actually the Faithless Looting, and this is even more interesting from Pete, he just double Dazes the Faithless Looting.
It's very strong here because now this is kind of fighting the enabler because you know that there are 2 payoff cards in hand.
And he can Wasteland away the Badlands.
Correct. This is just trying to make it to where Pulliam doesn't have time to play all of his cards.
Oh, and I love this. I'm swinging for Tarmogoyf. Delver was the draw, and we know the card under Delver is I believe we just, it's a lightning bolt. So it'll transform, and that's lethal next turn. This was really good, well played by Pete.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, honestly, both sides of this very well played, and this is kind of what you'll see from these combo decks sometimes is things just don't break.
And that bolt does it. So Will extends the hand, and Pete Ingram picks up the win.
Wow, 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 wow. That was so back and forth because, it kind of feels like letting things through, that Pulliam might have this, and it turns out he has 1 turn or he is literally at 0 life.
So we go to Modern where things are going to be decided with the 4-color Urza deck, and looks like that was a handshake as well. You saw them as he moved over because Braun-Duin is the winner there, which means, despite Corey's best efforts, his team does pick up the L this round, and it is Ingram, Braun-Duin, and Soorani moving to 2-0.
Yeah, and both of these squads are just so strong. This is what you'll run into in these team events where you'll see someone look like they are having an incredibly dominant